Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the grumpy old lizard said, catching the attention of the crowds. My name is Kolta Linta. I am the head of the Slaver Guild Eastern Branch. The old lizard continued. I know some of you are wondering on why this briefing is necessary after all. Everyone in this room are an expert on this. Kolta picked his nose. But I assure you this briefing is necessary, and I advise everyone to listen to the end for your own, oh, and there he goes. Kolta sighed. One of the lizard from the back had just stormed outside, leaving the room speechless. Well, it's his lost. Kolta snorted. The reason for this briefing is because the situation here is completely different from the other part of the guild. There is a new race from the Borkus continent, and the Senate had classified them as Telta, which means they are of equal status to us, Kolta informed, causing several loud gasps in the crowd. The new race is called the Humans, and they came from another world. The audience started to whisper among each other, a new Telta race? And they came from another world? For some of you, this isn't an old news, but for people who rarely or never step foot on this continent, this might come as a surprise. Kolta continued his announcement, ignoring the murmur from the audience. They look eerily similar to the felines, except the humans are furless and have no claws nor tail. They are also significantly much slower and weaker than your average felines. But the most important thing about the humans is not their similarity with the felines, nor is it about the fact that they came from another world, but it is their culture. The humans are heavily against slavery. The crowd became rowdy. How could the humans be classified as Telt if they hated slavery? One of the lizard commented, and the other lizards agreed. Not only are the humans heavily against slavery, some of them believe that slavery is so immoral that they have attacked several slaves' establishments in the Borkus continent, letting the slaves free or forcing the people there to employ the slaves as common workers. They also do not believe in the concept of race hierarchy and believe that every race is equal and even consider the feline as their close ally. The crowd went nuts hearing that. A new race from another world that looks like and even allied with the inferior felines, who hated slavery, and they were classified as Telta? The audience thought, I know what you are all thinking, but the Senate word is final. Kolta tried to calm the crowd. We do not know how many humans are there on the continent, but we know that they mostly live along the trade route. This is why all of you need to learn about the type of human settlement. The guild had classified human settlements into 4 types, human. The first type is, how long do you think this travel will take? Count Porky asked his aide. Probably around 2 months, my lord. One of his guards answered 2 months? Well, at least we have enough supplies. But let's hope those slaves survive when we arrive at the Lurep kingdom. Dead slaves are useless after all, Count Porky mused. We could arrive even earlier if the guild didn't stop us back there, Count Porky complained. They make me wait for hours only to let us to some briefing. Can you believe it? He spat. So, how long until we reach another settlement? Count Porky asked his aide. In around 20 minutes, we will reach a human settlement called the town of Salam, the aide answered. A human town? Bloody hell. We should have gone to the south back in the port. This route has the least amount of human settlement in its path, my lord. Count Porky stared at his aide with confusion. This route has the least amount of human settlement? These bastards are everywhere. Count Porky sighed and glanced back at the trail of wagons behind his carriage. The wagons are filled with slaves, both felines and vulpes. Before those bastards came, a slaver could sell around half a wagon of slaves for each city. But now? He had passed over 3 towns and only sold 1 or 2 slaves. Look! One of the guards pointed at the horizon, a large wall span from the edge of the forest to the side of a river. It seems we are close, my lord. The count nodded, and they continued. The count, with his wagons of slaves and entourage, entered the border checkpoint. Several of the humans' border guards stared at them as they went through. The count sat at his carriage while his aide dealt with the paperwork. The count looked outside and saw border guards watching his slave wagons with pity and anger. Bunch of weaklings. The count thought to himself, after what felt like an eternity, they were finally let through. They entered the town, and were immediately greeted by hundreds of tall brick houses. Nobody knows why, but humans seem to really love tall buildings. He heard a rumor that back in the humans' world, they have buildings as tall as a mountain. He had no way to check that claim, and he was pretty sure the claim was a complete bullcrap. As they continue along the main road, all the while being stared at by everyone they pass, a lone human approached them. The lone human wore a robe with a strange mark, 2 lines crossing each other with the vertical line taller than the horizontal. May the blessing of the divine fall upon all of us. I am Father Amos, and I have come to bargain, the human said. A human who wanted to buy these slaves? Interesting, the Count thought to himself. The Count, 300 silvers for the feline and 450 silvers for the vulpes. The Count replied. The price he suggested was quite expensive, but he hadn't sold any slaves that day. He had expected the human to reply in anger or complaint. Perhaps he will try to haggle for a lower price. Instead, the human walked up to him and paid the full price. I want 5 from that cart. The human pointed at one of his carriage which was filled with damaged slaves. The Count scratched his back in confusion. Why would the human want to pay full price for an entire carriage filled with useless slaves? The Count ordered his guard to pick 5 slaves from that specific carriage. His guard followed his order and throwed the 5 slaves to the ground. One of the pregnant trash struggled from his guard grasp and tried to escape, but the idiot was kicked to the ground like others. The Count looked back at the man and saw his face distorted in disgust. If you want, I could switch them. Those are the garbage that is about to die anyway, so no, the human replied. Before the Count could respond, another human came. Unlike the other human, this human wore a thin and long brown robe. Peace be upon ye! I am Ahmed, and I would like to buy 7, the strange human shouted. The human called Father Amos looked at Ahmed begrudgingly. The Count rubbed his back again, as he felt a tension brewing. The 2 human looked like as they were competing with each other. But why? Father Amos turned to him again. I would like to revise my purchase. I want to buy 10. 12. A shout came from behind him. The Count turned to saw a bald man in an orange robe rushing toward him. I don't have much, but I would like to free one of those poor slaves. Another human approached him. These humans really love slaves, huh? Maybe that's why no one had been by weight. Did he just set free? Count Porky stopped his train of thought and looked at the slaves the humans had bought. The slaves were surrounded by humans from all sides, bringing foods and drinks. Some began unlocking the shackles on their arm and neck. Count Porky smirked. The first type is the blue type. A blue type settlement is the friendliest toward slavery, at least by human standard. They would let slaver pass their town or city. However, they will try to buy your slaves to be freed. If you no longer wanted your slaves, a blue type city would be the best place to visit. However, they will always free their slaves, no matter what. If you do not want your abomination to be free, it is better to sell them elsewhere. Of course, killing unwanted slaves would be much easier. But if you could gain money from it, why not? This town is truly the best. Count Porky laughed to himself. He took another sip from his ale, a taste of victory. You are finished too? A lizard beside him asked. Finished? The Count asked. Finished. Selling all your slaves, I mean, he replied. Oh, that! The Count chuckled. I still have some that I wouldn't let go, and I also need 100 minimum for the King Phos of the Lurup Kingdom, he answered. I see for me I have sold every one of my slaves. I plan to retire soon. The Count chuckled. Why would you want to retire on this time, my friend? When there is this much eager buy, don't, he interrupted. If you do want to continue, I recommend you treating your slaves better before selling it. The Count laughed. Why? The more trash they are, the more likely the humans will buy them. Still, I know why you want me to stop. I also don't think those abominations should be free, but we could just capture them back again if we are lucky. Imagine the money, the Count boasted. But the humans will know, he said. And? What are they going to do? The lizard sighed before leaving. Hey, where are you going? The Count shouted. The Count spat on the ground before continuing his drink. He noticed a strange human on the corner of the bar talking to a box, bunch of lunatics. After a while, the Count returned back to his room. The Count had a very good sleep that night. The next day, he and his caravan left the city, coming out a couple times richer than when they came in. They pass around some more towns and villages, and just like back in the port, almost no one bought their slaves. They saw another large wall in the distance, with several weird structures near the walls, one of them being a large gray cubicle building. Yep, definitely a human settlement. They approached the border, and one of the border guards ran toward them. "Stop! Any slaver that trespasses the border will be killed." "Well then, how do we pass? We need to go to the Lurep kingdom, and we do not have much time." "Just go to the left, and after you pass a human village, go to the right, and you will arrive at the main road." The border guard replied before spitting on the ground and walking back to his post. "Arrogant bastards!" The Count slammed his palm against the wall of the carriage. Maybe when he arrived at the Lurep kingdom, he should ask the king there if they could try to conquer these little few. A yellow-type human settlement would force you to employ your slaves. If you have 1 or 2 personal slaves, then maybe this is fine. But for others, no. If you encounter this type of settlement, it is best to just go around. The same goes for an orange-type settlement, as they would straight up kill you if you pass their territory. Telltale, my ass. Have you seen the way they look? You call that race a telltale? Senate go insane, and now all of us need to foo my lord. A guard shouted from outside. "What is it? We are being ambushed." Now the last type of human settlement is the red type. If you encounter this kind of settlement, you are pretty much dead. Kolta warned the audience, whether it is a large city or a small village, you are dead. "Okay, maybe not really dead if you encounter a village, but you are still pretty screwed," Kolta said. "Unlike orange type who would not kill you if you do not go inside their territory, a red type will not only kill you but sometimes also actively hunt slaver." Most red type civilians come from a military background, soldiers, mercenaries, and others. They came from different tribes, with the most famous ones being America tribe, Sina tribe, and the Uan tribe. There are a lot of human tribes that came to our world, and some even fight here. But no matter what, they all agree that slavery is amoral and every slaver needs to be slain. Some tribes might be softer than the other, and will try to convince you instead, or they would use your body for an experiment. But most don't do either of that. How could the humans who are weaker than the felines defeat us, you might ask? The first reason is strength in number, and the second reason is that it's not only the humans. Count Porky lay on the ground. He wondered how everything had gone wrong. He watched as the barbarian began freeing his own slaves from the wagons. More than 100 abominations are now free, and all of his guards were dead. The barbarian were in hundreds, and they weren't only humans. Several other races were present, and he was pretty sure he could see another lizard on the mix. Traitors! A human approached him pointing his magic wand, which does not look like a magic wand at all, but it does magic, directly at him. "Heh, you bastard might have freed those abominations, but these slaves were meant for King Phos, the king of Lurep Kingdom. Once he knows you humans have stolen his slaves, you smooth skin wouldn't stand a chance." The human's eyes widened at the mention of King Phos, and then they laughed. "What are you filth laughing about, you insole? Bang, my lord. I have brought a terrible news." King Phos rose his eyebrows. "Speak," he commanded. "The slaves that your majesty has bought have unfortunately been lost in travel." The king facepalmed. "Great, more problems," he thought. "I see. Tell Count Leroy to buy another batch." The messenger quickly bowed before leaving the chamber. As the messenger left, another person entered the chamber. Thankfully for King Phos, she didn't come bearing bad news. "Good evening, your majesty." Cindy skips toward him. "Evening, my dear." King Phos smiled at his daughter. "So, how is your study today?" he asked. "Well, today Miss Neela is teaching me about math." King Phos listened to his daughter's story. "It looks like her study is going well, Dad. Where is Mommy?" Cindy asked. "Well, she is currently busy. She is currently in Ura." Cindy pouted upon hearing that. Mommy is always busy, she muttered. And King Falso agreed. Maybe he should tell her to calm down and take some rest. I understand, dear, but Mommy is doing her best all right, King Phalos assured her. Amina, her wife, was a human from the Morocco tribes. After the portal closed, she had been busy going around gathering books, music, and other artifacts from her tribes. King Lopez was fine with her passion for finding artifacts of her homeworld and tribes, but he felt like she had been too obsessed with it, and she is quite a workaholic even at her job as a diplomat and a queen. At first, he thought that was just how humans work, but a talk with other humans told him that working for 15 hours a day for 6 days a week was too excessive, even by human standards. King Lopez has heard about how a lot of artifacts from her tribes had been lost. Every time she returned to the castle, she looked very tired and pale, and her mood started to become more sour each day. Hopefully, with this surprise gift, her mood will be better. King Lopez thought, looking down at the row of slaves gathered around in the yard. King Lopez knew how much humanity hated slavery, so he bought thousands of slaves from the Feta continent to be freed. It was quite expensive. After that whole industrialization thing and the humans' pressure, there weren't that many slaves left in the continent. There were still a couple slaves on penal slavery, since the treaty with the humans did allow previous criminal to continue on their status. But most had either finished their sentence or freed early by humans. The king looked down on his yard again. Mama will be really happy, he mused, while stroking his daughter's head.